Hello, fellow Crusaders, and welcome to our latest episode. My name's Sean Wasserkrug, and today we're going to be doing another review roundup for all four films that came out this past weekend. Those four films are Kung Fu Panda 4, Damsel on Netflix, Imaginary, and Ricky Stanicky on Amazon Prime. Most, if not all four of these movies are movies that I was actually genuinely excited to see. They all have something that I either like or was excited to see. Kung Fu Panda, obviously I'm a huge fan of the Kung Fu Panda franchise, so I'm excited to see Po back. Damsel, I like Millie Bobby Brown. I like the mindset of where this film was going, and for a Netflix film, it's touch or go. We'll see how it goes. Imaginary, the trailer really intrigued me with the thought of a demonic stuffed teddy bear, much like Annabelle. I said Abigail, much like Annabelle in the Conjuring series, but the whole bear aesthetic really intrigued me for it. And then Ricky Stanicky, John Cena doing another raunchy R-rated comedy, this time with Zac Efron. That right there immediately got me excited. So let's go ahead and jump into Kung Fu Panda 4. Like I said, I have been a fan of Kung Fu Panda franchise since the first one came out. I full-on believe that Jack Black was born to play Po. It is the perfect role for him. Poe's energy, just everything about Poe just screams Jack Black, which, of course, because Jack Black has embodied this Poe character. And the first and the second Kung Fu Panda are probably two of my favorite animated films. I love visually how they look. The sound design, at least in the Tai Lung Prison Break in the first Kung Fu Panda movie, is one of my favorite sound demos that I loved using back when I used to sell surround sound. I love this franchise. Now, Kung Fu Panda 3, probably my least favorite of the franchise, mainly because I felt like it was directed more towards the kids than the first two films, which had a little more edge to it. And what I mean by edge is a little more adult themes. Not that the third one didn't, but I feel like it tried to go a little more kind of cutesy with little pandas and stuff like that. And while it was still a fun ride, it didn't quite match the level of the first two films. We come back to Kung Fu Panda 4 now. This is, I think, 7, 8 years after Kung Fu Panda 3. I don't think that that's how they're acting in terms of timelines of the characters, but it's been 7 to 8 years since the last film came out. And I didn't realize how much I missed Po until I saw him back on the screen again. I know that he has TV adaptations and stuff like that Jack Black does voice, but I've never actually got to watch those. I really just kind of stick to the Kung Fu Panda 4 or Kung Fu Panda movieverse. And the general plot for Kung Fu Panda is that is basically Po is no longer supposed to be the Dragon Warrior anymore. He's now supposed to become the spiritual leader of the Valley of Peace, which is what Oogway the tortoise was. And Shifu's basically saying, you need to find your successor, because you need to move on to the next step in your training. And it's basically him on this journey to try to find the successor, but him also not wanting to relinquish the Dragon Warrior because it's the one thing he feels he's good at. And so as he's on this journey to try to find this new Dragon Warrior, a new villain pops up called the Chameleon, who is basically trying to capture the Kung Fu essence, if you will, of all his past villains from the franchise, as well as many others, to become the ultimate warrior. And it's up to Po to try and stop her, as well as try to figure out his successor for the Dragon Warrior. That plot sounds fun. Is it, though? I will say, in terms of visuals, that's never a problem with the Kung Fu Panda franchise. Kung Fu Panda always looks great. Voice work, always stellar through this. Jack Black continues to be great as Po. He tends to give always 110% for the Po character, which is what really makes you embrace and love this franchise, is the energy that Jack Black gives Po. And he does no different here in the fourth film after all these years. Like I said, coming back into it with Po, you immediately just felt like this warm welcome back hug with his character. You also got Dustin Hoffman back as Shifu, and Tai Lung. Ian McShane is back as Tai Lung, which was always my favorite villain of the franchise. So it was nice to see him back. Now, the main issue, or the main problem is that the Furious Five are all missing in this film. So if you are a big sell point on having Po with the Furious Five in order to enjoy this film, I've got sad news for you. Mini spoiler alert, they show up during the end credits, but that is it, and none of them speak. So basically, it's probably the easiest way to not have to pay, Seth Rogen, Jackie Chan, Angelina Jolie, David Cross, and I'm leaving one person out, sadly. Lucy Liu. It's probably easier to do it that way so they don't have to pay them, but it sucks because we've had 3 films with the Furious Five. Granted, they weren't much in the third one either, but they were at least in it. But not having the Furious Five in here actually greatly diminishes the film because that's someone that Poe can bounce off of. This time around, he's got Zen, played by Awkwafina. She's basically playing a fox, much like we've seen in many Disney films now, even though this is DreamWorks with like Zootopia and The Bad Guys, which is another DreamWorks film. Obviously, foxes are thieves, and they're very good at their job and stuff like that. And so it's kind of this Poe and Zen storyline of he sees something in her she doesn't see in herself because all she's known her life is being a criminal and a thief and all this kind of stuff. And it's their journey as they grow to basically try to track down the chameleon, voiced by the always amazing Viola Davis, who, while great as the chameleon, doesn't get enough to do as her. So you don't cast someone like Viola Davis and not give her enough to do. Now, when she is being utilized, she's great. But I could have used a little more of her. Ke Huy Quan, who I always love, he's got a small role in here as Han. I think he's an armadillo in the film who has a past with Zen. And of course, Bryan Cranston and James Hong, they're both back as Lee and Mr. Ping, both Poe's fathers. If anyone who knows the franchise, you understand how that works. Bryan Cranston, given his all in this film. I was honestly impressed by how much Bryan Cranston gave in this film, because like you could have chalked this up as, oh, we brought Bryan Cranston back, he's probably not going to give the greatest performance, but we had to have him back because he played Lee. Bryan Cranston's going out there and he's putting on not an Oscar-worthy performance or anything, but he's got the same energy that Jack Black has as Poe, and I really loved that Cranston didn't just like just sleep this in and basically go, oh, no, I'm here, I'll do a couple voice things. Like, he's actively going after it in this film, and I enjoyed any time Lee and Mr. Ping were on. Little cheesy at times, but still fun, because you can tell that Hong and Cranston are actually giving it their all, much like Jack Black here in the film. The fight scenes are also, just like every Kung Fu Panda movie, they're stellar, they're great, they're shot beautifully, sound design is great in these films. Technicality levels, there's never a problem with the Kung Fu Panda franchise. It is the script that I sadly have a problem with. It's one thing to tell Poe he can't be the Dragon Warrior anymore because A, he's either getting older, or B, he's lost a step and he's not able to defeat bad guys the way he used to do anymore. But the problem is that we never see that from Poe. This feels like the same Poe that we've seen in all the films. It doesn't feel like he's aged at all. It doesn't feel like he's lost a step. He's still the same kick-ass Dragon Warrior who's defeating enemies with no problem. It's just now Shifu wants him to basically progress to the next level, which is basically not being a warrior anymore, but just being a guy who sits around and does spiritual stuff, which just kind of feels off for the Poe character. Like I said, if he was getting older and he wasn't able to fight as well anymore, I could see that transition to that role. But this is the same Poe we've seen through 3 movies. Why would you take the Dragon Warrior away? Why would you need to find a new one? I mean, you could have him train new fighters to be, kind of like how Shifu did with Tigress and all of them. Which, once again, if you need a new Dragon Warrior, just give it to Tigress. It's what Tigress has always wanted. But once again, we don't know how much time has passed between 3 and 4. Hell, even the romantic storyline that they were kind of starting in 3 with, I'm blanking on the panda's name that was voiced by Kate Hudson, that's completely removed from this film. So I don't even know if there has been much time, if any time has really passed between 3 and 4. Other than Lee has left where they were at, where all the pandas, and he's now kind of living in the Valley of Peace with Poe and Hong. But it didn't sit well with me that was the main storyline that we had to go with them basically saying, Poe, you're not allowed to be Dragon Warrior anymore, go find someone else. But it's a journey that Poe has to go on nonetheless. But once again, it just kind of felt like, well, shouldn't Tigress take over? Unless Tigress is too old, but once again, we don't know. The journey itself, Awkwafina, I like Awkwafina to a point. I do think she gets overused a lot in movies. But I say that whenever I see the trailers. But then whenever I watch the movie, I enjoy her, immensely. But if you've seen an Awkwafina animated film, she tends to play the same character every time, which is basically herself, which can be good or bad. You can see Ryan Reynolds doing that, and it works great. And with Awkwafina, it works for the most part, but it starts to feel a little tiring. Not that where I'm tired of her, but just I want to see something else. I want to see her do something else. Like, I feel like Awkwafina is playing the same character we've seen in 8 other animated films that we've seen of her and live action that we've seen of her, and I just kind of want to see her do a little more with it. And that is something that I would like to see her do in the future. She's good in the film. Her and Jack Black have great chemistry together. I just want to see more from her in future films, whether it be animated or live action. And live action, she has shown more because, dramatic roles and stuff like that. But with animated, I would really like to see her be a little bit more than just the wisecracking smooth talker, which, yes, I know she wasn't that in Little Mermaid, but I digress. I just want to see a little more from Awkwafina from what I've seen from her in animated films. But at the end of the day, with Kung Fu Panda, it's a Kung Fu Panda movie. I'm still going to enjoy it. I still like it for what it was, but it just didn't match what I was hoping for with Kung Fu Panda. And it's mainly the story. I liked the characters. I liked the journey that we did get to go on. I just didn't like the plot points that got us to those areas. I wish we would have had a little more time with the villain, much like we had with other villains in the previous films. I felt like there was a lot of story there that we could have unpacked and done a little more with that we just did not get. But like I said, at the end of it, I put it kind of right there with Kung Fu Panda 3. Kung Fu Panda 3 obviously was its own kind of film with him, finding his family and father, where this one is more of him just kind of realizing he needs to relinquish what he has and not just be comfortable with what he's good at and kind of move on to the next step, which once again, I don't agree with. I think he should continue being what he is, and even by the end of the movie, I still don't feel like he has done that. I feel like he's still being who he was, and nothing's really changed outside of just, a new person to kind of hit for him to train. But yeah, Kung Fu Panda 4 for me, I'm going to give a 77%. Like I said, I liked it, but it doesn't quite match the energy that the first 2 films had. I'd say it's probably about on par, if not maybe a little under Kung Fu Panda 3. Going to our next film is going to be Damsel on Netflix. I like Millie Bobby Brown. I know some people aren't huge fans of her, but I am. And I like to see her branch out and do other roles outside of her just being 11 or her just being kind of the annoying teenager kid in the Godzilla franchise. But when I saw this trailer, or when I saw first images of her for Damsel, I immediately was intrigued because I thought it was something a little bit outside of her comfort zone to a point, but not too far out to the point, because, we've seen her battle, demons and monsters and stuff in Stranger Things, and her have to deal with, stuff out of her control, like in Godzilla. But this looked more like instead of being like the victim, it kind of joins into being like a potential heroine badass, and also have to battle a dragon, because the main plot point of Damsel is a dutiful damsel agrees to marry a handsome prince, only to find out that the royal family has recruited her as a sacrifice to repay an ancient debt. And basically with that, it's this royal family basically marries off their prince to a woman, and they basically sacrifice her to a dragon, and by doing so, it keeps their kingdom safe and wealth and all this kind of stuff. And so it's basically a film about Millie Bobby Brown's Elodie, basically being thrown into a cave, not knowing what to do, and then having to kind of figure it out and defend herself and try to take on this dragon. There's things to like about this movie. I thought the movie was fine to okay, but could have been so much better. And a lot of that has to do with, once again, just like Kung Fu Panda, has to do with the plot, has to do with the story. I don't really think outside of one performance, there's not really a performance in this film I didn't dislike. I think Millie Bobby Brown does a solid job as Elodie. And the problem is that she's in a cave being hunted by a dragon in this movie, which the dragon looks great also, by the way. But you don't want her just to walk around and stealth creep around the whole film, because then it's very dull and boring, and, suspenseful, yes, but you have to have some dialogue going on through the film, and the problem is that every time she talks, you're like, shut up, the dragon's hunting you, he can hear you. And so you want to tell her to shut up, but you also want to have some dialogue, so it's not, quiet and boring throughout the film. But the other problem is that we have an actual really solid cast around her. We got Ray Winstone, who plays her father, Lord Bayford. You got Angela Bassett, who plays his wife, Lady Bayford. You've got Nick Robinson, who plays Prince Henry. You got Robin Wright back from, Princess Bride days playing Queen Isabel. That's a solid 4 people to cast. And then also, you've got, I'm going to have to look up her name, but I'm going to butcher it, so I apologize ahead of time, because I know I always butcher this woman's name. Shori Agdashloo. I apologize. That is awful. But she voices the dragon. And she's a solid actress in everything I've seen her in, from like 24 and other things that I always watch her in. And she voices the dragon, and she does a great job. Because that's the other thing too, is that there is kind of like a Smaug Bilbo aspect to it. We have the dragons hunt her and talking to her throughout, and there's a communication thing going on there. But once again, every time Elodie talks, you want her to be quiet because the dragon's going to find you, kind of thing. But this movie's an hour 45, or hour 50-ish, sorry. And for the first, 45 minutes of the movie, we're kind of, 30 to 45 minutes, we're building the story around Elodie and her family, and she's basically kind of, if we think about, in Game of Thrones style, she kind of lives in Winterfell. It's a cold, barren wasteland. They don't have the food or the wood or stuff, and people are leaving the kingdom because it's not safe there anymore. They're, growing hungry, and they're freezing to death and stuff like that. So her father marries her off to this rich kingdom to get wealth to help with the kingdom. And we're building a lot of story blocks with this. I mean, we're seeing how she interacts with her sister, Flora, played by Brooke Carter, who to me was kind of the weakest character of the film. I really disliked her character in this movie. I don't think she acted very well in this movie. She's probably the weakest part of the film. But we're building a lot of building blocks of just seeing how Elodie is. She's a strong character. She's a little defiant to a point, much like a Belle in Beauty and the Beast. And we're building these characters throughout, and we're kind of seeing little crumbs here and there. But as soon as Elodie gets dropped into the cave and she's on her own, we really don't ever go back to these characters. And I get that the whole main plot point they're trying to go for this film is that it's very much she's on her own. It's very suspenseful, suffocating, because she's in a dark cave by herself being hunted by a dragon. Oh my god, is she going to get out? But there are moments where we could have potentially gone back to the other characters, seeing how they reacted to what happened to their daughter, or see maybe, because there's this plot point where the prince, played by Nick Robinson, doesn't really want to do this. He's being forced to do it by his mother, and we get little breadcrumbs of that, near the end of the film. But they could have brought that in throughout the middle of the story, just to give a little fresh air, a little more plot, and a little more character to these actors. Because you don't cast someone like Angela Bassett and really only give her 3 legitimate scenes in this film. You're wasting her talent. Nick Robinson's a solid actor. You're wasting his talent. You're wasting Robin Wright. You're wasting Ray Winstone. They're in, chunks in the beginning, but there's so many times where I was like, I feel like there are moments where we could have gone back to them. Not long moments. I don't need you to stop going away from Millie Bobby Brown for 15, 20 minutes, but there could have been little, 2, 3, 5-minute breaks in between where we could have gotten to them real quick and seen what was going on with them, how they're reacting, because their daughter's gone and presumed dead. What's going on with them? We don't get that. And it's something that I really wish we could have gone back to, or at least shown this even the parts with the king, with him, arguing with his mother because he didn't like this. He actually liked Elodie. He didn't want to sacrifice Elodie. There's stuff about that I felt like could have brought a little more fresh air, a little more breath into this story, into these characters, instead of just Millie kind of, walking around, having to talk to herself, and almost like a video game when you're kind of having to level up. You're kind of having to search the whole area of the location you're at to try to find clues, and to the point where she has to kind of almost mentally chalk up thoughts in her head of how things happened previously, just so that way there's plot to push forward. Now, when we do get some action in this film between her and the dragon, it's exciting, it's fun, it's really well shot, but I just felt like there could have been a little bit more to it. There's a lot of meat left on the bone with this movie. What's there is fine, but it could have been so much more. And it's not, like I said, it's not really anything against the cast. It's the plot, and it's the story. They could have done a little bit more. Also, I had an issue with how it ended. I can't really talk about that without going into spoilers, but the way we get to the end and what they choose to do with what they do at the end of the film, didn't sit right with me. And like I said, I can't really explain that without spoiling the film. So it's just something that I didn't like how it ended. It kind of, to me, didn't serve a purpose for what the character was going through and where we got her to a point. I know I'm being very, very vague here, but it's hard to explain it without spoiling the film, so I apologize. But the ending didn't sit right with me. I felt like the ending could have been stronger, could have actually added more character to Elodie's character instead of where we went with it. I would love to talk about it. I just can't. But yeah, at the end of the day, with Damsel, I wasn't bored. I just wanted more from it. So it's a average to okay film on Netflix. There's going to be a lot of people who are going to love this film because it's, Millie Bobby Brown being a badass fighting a dragon. And like I said, those parts are good. It's everything around that needed to be stronger and utilized better to help emphasize Millie Bobby Brown's performance and the situation that she was in. So for me, I'm going to give Damsel a 63%. I really wanted a little bit more out of this. And I know my people are going, hey, it's a Netflix film. What are you expecting? Like, you're thinking too much into it or you're expecting too much. No, I just expect a fully well-rounded film. And whether it be a Netflix film or not, we can't use that as an argument anymore. Netflix has put out stellar films. Brian and I have picked our movie of the year for, I think, the last 3 years in a row was a Netflix film. So I don't want to hear, oh, it's a Netflix film, just let it go. It's, do you want to give it the full attention? Do you want a well-thought-out story? Or do you just kind of want to rush something out and put it on Netflix? And I felt like this had potential to be something more, but I felt like they just kind of wanted to rush it out because it's Netflix. But moving on to our next film, it is Imaginary. And the general plot for Imaginary is a woman returns to her childhood home to discover that the imaginary friend that she left behind is very real and unhappy that she abandoned him. Like I said, when I saw this trailer, I was immediately intrigued by this. I thought that the stuffed animal situation, I mean, granted, we've had Five Nights at Freddy's and, we've had, like, the Boogeyman and stuff, like, recently. So, but I liked the idea of a little stuffed teddy bear potentially being this demonic presence in a house. It intrigued me enough to really want to check this out. Also, lead cast of DeWanda Wise as the lead character. I like DeWanda. I liked her and everything that she's done so far, so I was immediately intrigued to see her. I was happy to see Tom Payne, who plays her husband Max. If people who don't know who Tom Payne is, he plays Jesus on The Walking Dead. He also had a show a couple years back called Prodigal Son. Really talented actor. Was really excited to see him in this. Yeah, this was a movie that I really wanted to enjoy. I really wanted to like it for what it was going to be, but it really kind of felt like I was playing horror movie bingo or a horror movie scavenger hunt, where I was basically watching a film and then checking off every horror movie cliche that this movie hit. It's like, oh, there's that. I've seen that done. Oh, there's that. I've seen that done. And I know a lot of horror films use a lot of the same things. That's why they're cliches. They're cliches for a reason. And there's a lot of movies that use a lot of the same things. But the problem is that every time I saw something that Imaginary did that even remotely sparked an interest in me, or even remotely maybe go, oh, that was actually really cool, immediately in my head was like the little kid from South Park with the Simpsons episode where the Simpsons did it, because I immediately went, that was actually really cool. But that other movie did that, and they did it way better. Or that movie did that, but they did it way better. And that's kind of what Imaginary was, for the most part, was a bunch of... I mean, there's a story, there's a plot to it, and it's not bad by any means. DeWanda Wise, I think, is solid in the film. Tom Payne, sadly, is only in, like, 2, maybe 3 scenes. He's completely underutilized in this film. I wish he was utilized more. But the two kids, Tegan Burns, who plays the older daughter, Taylor, and Piper Braun, who plays the younger daughter, Alice, who is attached to Chauncey the bear, I didn't really love their performances. Taylor's character is, the jaded teenager, you're not my real mom kind of crap. Her character's so just over the top mean and bitchy, just to be mean and bitchy. And when we get to the inevitable, like, third act, when shit's going down and shit's going crazy, she still doubles down on being the mean bitchy to the point where it's like, do you just want to let the bear eat her? Like, can we just kill her off? Because she's not bringing anything. Now, eventually that changes, but it's just like, it's so, like, not the right time to continue to be like this with the character. And And it just made me just she's not a likable character. And you want to like her because, oh, she's a daughter, she's a teenager. No, you should like her. But it's like, no, I kind of cool with her if she dies, because I really just she's an unlikable character through 99% of this film. And she might be cool or nice for the last like 5 to 7 minutes of the film, but there's a whole rest of that movie where she is just a unlikable character. And Alice as Piper, I could chalk this up to just being a young actress. There are moments where she's really good. There's a scene with her and a psychiatrist talking that I thought she did a great job. But then there were other times through the film where I just felt like she couldn't find a tone of being the innocent girl, or almost being like she's possessed by Chauncey the Bear. And I feel like she couldn't find a tone that she wanted to stay with, which, once again, child actor. It's hard. I don't want to poke at her like that. I've seen performances from younger actors who do such a stellar job. I just don't think Piper did as well as they probably could have gotten out of her. But like I said, I'm not going to pick on her. She's doing the best price that she can. It's just not a performance that I absolutely loved, much like, once again, we go back to The Boogeyman from last year, and the teenager and the young daughter cast in that I thought was stellar, and I thought they did a fantastic job. This movie does not capture that. But yeah, I mean, there's so many films and horror films that I was watching through this that I was like, oh yeah, that's like Insidious. That's like The Boogeyman. That's like this. That's like this. That's like this. And all the movies that I kept saying, that's like this, they all did it better than Imaginary. And which was a real bummer, because I really wanted to like this movie. I really wanted to enjoy this film for what it was. But by the end of it, I was just kind of like, this. There was an idea here, but the idea was overstuffed and overclouded with, let's grab this from this film, this film, and this film, and let's all jumble it together and throw it in here, and maybe people won't notice. Well, I'm sorry. Horror fans will notice, and horror fans will pick this movie apart like crazy, because if they've seen it once, they've seen it 100 times in other horror films, and then when you do it, it's even gonna stick out more. And then it's like, well, if you're gonna do it, and I've said this many times on the channel before, if you're gonna do something that's been done 100 times, do it in a way that's unique and different, that makes you different from everybody else. Maybe you go, you know what? I've seen them do this plot point before, but you know what? They actually went out there and did something different and unique, and I appreciate that, and I enjoy that. We've seen that with the Groundhog Day effect, with Happy Death Day, and stuff like that, or Freaky with the body swap things. We've seen these stories done 1,000 times before, but what are you going to do that's different and unique? And those horror films did that. Imaginary didn't do anything new. It didn't do anything original, which it could have done. And there's just certain performances, like I said, didn't work for me. Even the old lady next door, Gloria, played by Betty Buckley, that one just started to become a caricature and cartoony to a point. Honestly, DeWanda Wise was really the only real performance that I actually thought was actually well thought out and enjoyed throughout the film. But even then, there's a lot of plot and a lot of backstory to her that they could have delved into more, but they wanted it to be used as more of a twist at the end of the film, when they could have basically made that a strong backbone to this film, and they just did not do it. There's just a lot of missed opportunity and a lot of ideas that really could have been utilized to make this unique and really good, but instead they just wanted to grab every horror cliche from another film and use that to make this film. So for me, Imaginary, the horror aspects are good. They can be used, but once again, done better in previous films we've seen. So at the end of the day, it's just like, I'm kind of disappointed with it. It's not something I'd recommend. Nothing against DeWanda Wise or even Tom Payne, but he's not really utilized in the film at all. But for me, I'm going to give Imaginary 46%. Going to our last film, we've got Ricky Stanicky on Amazon Prime. One thing that works for me is John Cena in an R-rated comedy and Zac Efron in an R-rated comedy. These guys are, to me, are always funny. They have charisma coming out of their butt, literally. And I enjoy watching these two together. You also add Andrew Santino, who I've seen him in little things here and there. I don't know if I've fully grasped onto him as someone that I enjoy watching. And then you got Jermaine Fowler, who I've seen in things that I've actually enjoyed him in, much like, I think Superior Donuts was a TV show he did a few years back. I actually enjoyed him in that, and he was also in Coming to America 2, which is actually he's one of the few people that I actually enjoyed in that movie. I think also potentially with DeWanda Wise. But Ricky Stanicky, the general plot for this is when three childhood best friends pull a prank that goes wrong, they invent the imaginary Ricky Stanicky to get them out of trouble. 20 years later, they still use the non-existent Ricky as a handy alibi for their immature behavior and adventures, until eventually they get caught in one and they have to basically hire an actor to play Ricky Stanicky. In comes John Cena, who plays, I think it's Rock Hard Rod, or it's Hot Rod, I think it's Rock Hard Rod, who's basically a pornographic, X-rated singer who loves to basically do versions of songs that that are known and beloved for the from the 80s and 90s, and then reutilize them about masturbation, which sounds ridiculous, but god damn it, John Cena fucking knocks it out of the park with that. Every time he does one of those, I was laughing my ass off. It's hilarious. It's one of the funniest moments of the year so far, because he's dressed up like them. It's funny. But yeah, Ricky Stanicky, like I said, you got Zac Efron, he plays Dean, he's kind of playing the, the movie starts, we kind of see how they are when they're younger, and Zac Efron's character kind of seems like the one that's, I don't want to say the wimp, but he's the one who's always trying to do the right thing, doesn't want to get in trouble, and then you've got Andrew Santino's character, who's basically playing the troublemaker, and then Jeremy, which is, his name is JT. And then you've also got Wes, who's Jeremy Fowler's character, who's kind of like the, he literally does play the token black friend in this movie. But he's the one who basically just kind of goes along with it, let's have fun. But he actually has a heart of gold, and he's more like, let's just tell the truth, guys. Like, whatever happens, happens. And the other ones are like, no, we don't want that, we're not going to tell the truth, we're going to get in trouble, so let's make up an imaginary friend named Ricky Stanicky. But yeah, the movie itself, it's funny, but it's funny because of John Cena. Zac Efron's kind of, for the most part, having to play it straight because he's kind of playing, a lot of this movie is Zac, Jermaine, and Andrew having to kind of react to what John Cena's doing, which John Cena's a one-man show through this. He's fantastic. William H. Macy plays Dean and JT's boss in the film. And he's got some great moments because William H. Macy's actually really good at comedy. If you've ever seen like Shameless and other things, he's hilarious when it comes to comedy. And those are kind of the funny moments of the film, is whenever John Cena and William H. Macy are working together. Efron is, for the most part, like I say, he's playing reactive through everything that's happening. Jermaine Fowler's Wes, I know he's funny. He kind of, once again, not really given much to do in terms of the comedy, just more reacting to it. He does get a little more to do than Zac Efron does. And Andrew Santino as JT, I didn't really care for his character in this. He's kind of the one character that's kind of the unlikable one of the group. He's kind of just the whiner and the one who just wants to be a dick to everybody throughout the whole film. So I actually, he gets the least amount to do in the movie, but I also didn't mind that because he's the least likable of the characters in the group. Zac Efron, Dean obviously is the most likable one because how do you not hate, you don't hate Zac Efron, you like Zac Efron. And Jermaine Fowler is kind of like just the, like I said, he's the token black friend, but he's also kind of like, I don't want to say he's dumb, but he's kind of the simpleton of the group. He kind of is just the one who doesn't catch on right away or doesn't get it, and it could be because he's baked half the time, but it also could be just because they all treat him like he's beneath them because he's not smarter, or they think they're smarter than him, and he's really not. He's actually clever. He just does it in his own way. But the film itself, it's just, once again, much like with a lot of the films I've been talking about in this review, they could have done more with it. They could have done a little more comedy. They could have had a lot more, antics to have happen. Like, the first half of this film is great. I think it works really well. I think they utilize John Cena's character as Rod real well. When you first have him become Ricky, I think and it's at this brisk. I think that's when it's at its best. But then after the brisk, it's kind of like the movie kind of takes a turn because Ricky Stanicky starts to become a focal point of their lives, and then it starts to become, how can they get rid of John Cena? How can they get rid of Ricky or Rod, whichever name you want to use? And it's not funny anymore. It's just kind of like you're just watching it, and it's not bad by any means. You're just watching it. It's just the laughs start to become fewer and farther between. There's a funny moment near the end with John and William H. Macy. That's funny. But once again, it's them that's funny. It's not Andrew, Zac, or Jermaine. It's, once again, they're just reacting to what John and William H. Macy's doing. So in terms of the film, John Cena and William H. Macy get a ton to work with, and they do well in it. But the three main leads don't really get a lot to do outside of just reacting. And their characters, like I said, Efron's likable, Jermaine can be likable, and Andrew Stanton's character, I can kind of just, he could just go away. But there could have been moments. There could have been moments where they interacted better with Ricky, kind of worked with him a little bit more, and done more to actually make this a lot more fun and raunchy, and just kind of went wacky with it. And instead, they really try after the Brisk to kind of make it more of a how can we get rid of him instead of how can we embrace him. And by the end of the movie, they eventually get to there. But I feel like they went one way with the tone of the film. They could have gone another way, and I think that would have worked way better. And had a lot more fun with it, because by that halfway point of the film, it stops being fun, and you start to kind of feel like, am I supposed to root for Ricky, or am I supposed to root for the three friends? Because right now, I'm fully on board with Ricky, and I think I'm supposed to be on the side of Zach and Jermaine and Andrew, but I don't want to be, and I don't feel like I need to be. I feel like I need to be fully on board with John Cena. And so you feeling that way, it just kind of makes you not really enjoy it. It just kind of makes you just more watching it and not understanding what route to take until we get to the end of the film. So for me, I really liked the first half of this film. I thought it was really really gelling, really grooving to almost even like to a Hangovers aspect. Not as funny as Hangovers, trust me, but we were getting to that place, because it was in Atlantic City and not Vegas, but we were getting there. And then it kind of just stops being that. So for me, like I said, I liked for what we got. I think John Cena was great. I think he should continue doing stuff like this. I think this is his niche. Much like with The Rock, Rock's got some great comedy and Rock's great with action. I think Cena really is jumping in on this, as long as he's doing the R-rated stuff. I don't want Cena going around and doing, the kid stuff like Playing with Fire. I want him to continue doing stuff like this and Peacemaker and even Trainwreck. I think this is what makes him great. And he needs to continue doing that. And Zac Efron, phenomenal in Iron Claw last year. This kind of felt like like 10 years ago, Zac Efron doing these movies. And I kind of, while I enjoy seeing him in these, I think he needs to continue riding that Iron Claw wave and try to get into the more of the dramatic roles, so that way he gets established even more as a better actor that I know he can be. And Andrew Santino, I feel like he needs a film where he kind of leads and he's not the third party, because I think this guy can be funny. I just haven't seen it yet. And Jermaine Fowler, like I said, I like the guy. I just want him to I want to see him in a role where he's not playing what he was playing in this film. So for me, like I said, a lot to like, but a lot to kind of be disappointed and not like. So I'm going to give Ricky Stanicky a 73%. I think if you're a fan of John Cena's comedies and Zac Efron, check it out. If you're not a fan of them, this is not going to move the needle to make you want to watch it. But if you are, check it out. It's on Amazon Prime for free. I hope you guys enjoyed all these reviews. If you guys did, go ahead and hit that like, share, and subscribe button to the channel so you guys stay up to date with all the latest videos that pop up on the Movie Crusaders. And of course, you guys can follow us on all the social media outlets you see below. Coming out this week, we've got Love, Lives, and Bleeding. We've got the American Society of Magical Negroes. We've got Arthur the King. I don't know if I'm going to get out to see any three of these films. Maybe Love, Lies, Bleeding. I'm not sure. But if I do, we'll have them on the channel here, whether it be an individual video or a video like this, or on Movie Crusaders Chat About with Brian Michaels. But on the 21st, we've got Roadhouse, and I am definitely going to be seeing that. We will definitely have a review for that. And next week, we will have Ghostbusters Frozen Empire, one of my more anticipated films of the year. So we will definitely be having reviews for those two. And then, like I said, Brian Michaels and myself will be back for another Movie Crusaders Chat About. We'll probably talk about outcome of the Oscars. I know there's some Scream news that's popped in the last day or two that we're definitely going to be talking about, as well as a lot of trailers. So we'll be back to talk about that stuff as well. So we hope you guys tune in. And until next time, in case I don't see you, go watch some movies and go have some fun.
You're still here. It's over. Go home.